get this going. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. Today we have a fantastic guest on the show, Jamie. Jamie has done everything from buy and hold investing to infinite banking to investing in notes. So I'm expected to learn a ton from this show, and thank you, Jamie, for joining. Today,
no
Jamie's
problem.
going to go through his journey, give us some scoop on the unbelievable returns you can get on investing in notes. So listen up, grab a pen and paper, because I expect this is going to be a great show. So with that, Jamie, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to
Absolutely. Well, for our listeners are used to this, but maybe you're not. So we like to start out with the difficult questions here. What's your favorite ice cream?
Oh man, this is might sound kind of basic and boring, but I'm gonna have to say vanilla.
Vanilla?
Yeah. So have you heard that one before?
No, I haven't. So we do get into the controversial topic though on toppings. Toppings, yes or no?
Sure. I mean, fairly basic on toppings. Butterfinger, I guess, would spice it up a little bit. Something with peanut butter, nuts, that kind of thing.
There you go.
But to me, vanilla ice cream, it's like one of those. I know there are variations of vanilla, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't get too crazy with it. Yeah, I'm not an ice cream connoisseur.
Yeah, so. Tried and true. You can't go wrong with vanilla, Ben.
Exactly.
So tell our listeners, what's the scoop? What do you do today?
So today I still work part-time for the Defense Department, but I am more focused on my mortgage note investing company. My wife and I also have a portfolio of single family rentals that are an important piece of our overall portfolio. But right now I'm mostly focused on Labrador Lending, which is our note investing company.
Awesome. And where did your real estate journey begin?
So I guess, 1976, I was born. No, I'm kidding. I mean, that is true. But, my father has been a real estate agent for many, many years. My wife and I each worked for title companies back in the day after college, kind of, not knowing what you want to do. Oh, here's a real job, So I worked for a title company for 2 years. Then I worked for a mortgage company for a little bit there before joining the military. Whole different story. So I would say kind of started back then, just getting exposed to different, parts of real estate as well as investors. And, coming out of college, it's like, what is title insurance? How does a mortgage actually work? Real basic stuff that I did kind of learn back then. Fast forward about 10, 11 years ago, my wife and I bought our first rental property, which we still own. So that's when kind of the active real estate investing began, I would say, December 2009, I think it was. So we have that condo today. And then ever since then, we've kind of grown our single family portfolio. And like I said, now we're more into the note space.
You have an interesting story on your first rental property there. That's a self-managed property, right?
Yes. So we have the self-managed property. So that guy, we have the same tenant actually. And he still, well, now because of COVID, we've kind of switched over to PayPal, but ideally he would prefer to come and drop off 6 months of checks twice a year. Honestly, so I literally just sent him, we're raising the rent again, but we've barely raised it. We've raised it maybe 2 times, 3 times total, I guess, in the last 10 years. The guy pays on time every time. If something breaks, obviously we're going to fix it, but it's a condo. The numbers aren't incredible from our standpoint, but I mean, I almost forget that I own this property. So
I one of my first properties was a condo as well. It was very close to me. How did you find that property? Is it near you, or
it is near
us?
us? Yeah, it's and honestly, that's most of our rentals are near us. This one is the most near to our primary residence. So I am very familiar with the area. It was off the MLS through my father as an agent. negotiated a good deal, but not some distressed property where we were adding value. And it wasn't, I wouldn't buy it today. I mean, but I haven't sold it either. So it's a nice staple part of our portfolio, nice stable income, and it's a decent rental.
Is there an HOA there?
There is, and that's one. So there's a condo association, and they now do not allow rental properties. Well, you have to have owned the property for 4 years at a minimum to rent it out. So yeah, you could buy it and then live in it, or keep it vacant for 4 years and then decide to rent it out. But we already had our tenant in there, so we were grandfathered in. So I understand that from the condo association standpoint, they're trying to keep the property values up, and I do review their minutes from their meetings, and I'm not an active participant on the board or anything, but I think they do a good job of managing their funds and planning for the future. So
What's been your experience with the HOA specifically, though?
I mean, they've been responsive. I mean, this is the only property I own that has an HOA, and I intentionally do that. So, for now they're fine, and they've been fine for a decade plus. But a couple personalities can change that, at the drop of a hat. So, some investors love investing in condos, and you can do pretty well with them. I mean, they're pretty maintenance free, really. We're not worrying about the exterior of the building or lawn care or anything like that. So in general, we haven't had any issues with the HOA, really. So, but it's not something that I advise people to go do. I stay away from them.
See, I go back and forth on them. 2 of my properties have an HOA, and they're, I think, like $100 a month. So not the cheapest of them, but not the most expensive. Where I have a place in Florida, it's like $225 a month, and it's just for a 16 unit, it's not much. But the benefit I found with an HOA is exactly that. They do all the lawn, they do all the trash. Well, mine does the trash. And then my insurance is just significantly lower there.
Sure.
Now, for newbie investors, the things you got to watch out for is, do they have the reserves for new roofs? Do they have the reserves for any kind of work that needs to be done to the roads or the sewer systems and things like that? Have you come up to any of those forks in the road with that property?
No, they've really done a good job of planning and keeping their budgeting on point. Another thing with condos specifically is I've found that they kind of have a mind of their own as far as appreciation, and in some ways they can spike real fast, and they don't necessarily. I mean, this is a blanket statement, and all real estate is local, but they kind of don't really follow the market trends in some ways. So we bought this condo, and it was, like I said, not a bad. I mean, we didn't overpay for it, but it just, I mean, as far as property value, it did not budge whatsoever. Until really in the last couple of years, it started to come up. But I would say not, and I don't recommend people, speculate and buy for appreciation as their primary goal. But it can be, let's face it, people have made a lot of money from appreciation. So it's not something to ignore either. I just find condos have a mind of their own as far as appreciation goes. So it's, if you're looking for a passive way to go, and you, maybe, and I spoke with an investor a few weeks ago, and he owns, I don't know, I think he and his partner own 30 or 40 condos, but they are on the board, and they, on the HOA board, and they have some control there and some insight as to what's going on. So it's not really passive in that sense, but it can be a good niche. But we did pivot away from that, and honestly, I didn't. So most of our Maryland, so we have the one condo, and then we have 6 townhouses in Baltimore County, Maryland, right? And initially, years ago, I just assumed, all townhouses have an HOA, so I can't buy a townhouse as a rental if I want to avoid HOAs. Well, that's not true. I mean, especially in, the older townhouses, some, in Baltimore, people call them row homes, but um, we've got 6 townhouses in the Towson area, which is, a good area with like hospitals and schools and that kind of thing. And none of them have an HOA. So, um, yes, it's more on us to deal with exterior issues and things like that, and neighbors. Um, but there's no HOA to deal with. So that kind of was our niche as far as our Baltimore County and our Maryland rental properties.
Yeah, one thing you said that I want to make sure that I highlight is that you don't invest for appreciation alone. That's probably my number one rule for anybody getting into early stages of real estate investing, is that if it doesn't cash flow, then it doesn't make sense in my book, because
Yeah.
the way I view real estate is a place to store cash and allow it to continue to drip income to you. And if people can make a ton of money speculating, people can make a ton of money buying land and getting it ready and all that sort of thing. But kind of like Warren Buffett doesn't invest in gold because it doesn't spit off a dividend or any cash flow. That's the way I view real estate as well. So I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure I highlighted that.
I would.
Your,
Yeah,
your
totally
other
agree.
6 homes, so they're pretty close to you.
Mhm.
How did you find those? Are they all in one building? Talk to us a little bit about
No,
those.
they're well, 3 of them are within probably a quarter mile of each other, which is maybe a little too close together, but and then 2 are in another part of town, but um, they were all MLS deals. So, if you go back and say, what could we have done better? Um, we could have probably, as far as our rental portfolio in Maryland, we probably could have hunted a little harder for off-market deals, and we probably overpaid a little bit for a couple of them from an investor standpoint, but they've all appreciated, and they all spit off cash flow, like you said, and um, so they were all MLS deals, through my father as an agent, and he's a real good negotiator himself, so that always helps, and they're not incredible deals, but they do cash flow, and they are. Now we have a property manager. It's mostly a little bit of monthly paperwork, and there's really not much for me to do. So
Yeah. And then when did you buy those? Was that the 2010 to 2014 timeframe?
so right around 2014, I kind of was really getting tired of my full-time job and my commute, and a lot of your listeners can likely identify with that, and started listening to a ton of Bigger Pockets podcasts, and unfortunately your podcast wasn't out yet, but now I have another one to add to the list. But so started reading a ton on Bigger Pockets, reading a lot of books, and just getting that mindset piece in gear. And I will say to your listeners, it really is critical. Instead of start thinking, oh, why can't I invest in real estate, or what are the obstacles? And those are important to acknowledge, but I started to really focus. I started to say, my father's been a real estate agent for many years. My brother is a loan officer. I worked for a mortgage company. My wife and I each worked for title companies. Um, Interest rates are pretty low. Starting to realize, like, I actually have a kind of a built-in team around me, and I have my own experience. Why can't I go buy some rental property? So around 2014, 2015, in the middle of 2015, I actually went part-time at my job, my work. And that obviously gave me a lot more time to focus on rental properties. And so we did do 3, from 2015 through 2018. We bought 2 per year. So um, I guess it was 2015, 2 per year. Maybe late 2017 was the last one we purchased, but out of those 6 townhomes, we did 3 pretty major renovations, and essentially following the Burr Method. That I'm sure your listeners are familiar
Well,
with.
so talk to us about the Burr method in case they aren't.
Sure.
What does Burr mean, and why is it so powerful?
So Burr is a term that was coined by Brandon at Bigger Pockets, or at least he takes credit for it.
Which he
But
takes credit for every
yeah,
quote. So
exactly. Right. Um, and so it stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So what you're doing is you're finding a distressed property, something that's old, there's it's a motivated seller. You're finding a property at a good deal, which is harder and harder to do right now. But finding that, adding some value by rehabbing the property. So you have your systems in place, and you're able to create forced appreciation. So most appreciation, when we say appreciation, it's usually market conditions, especially in single family, residential real estate. Commercial real estate is a whole different animal, where you can directly affect the property value by, we don't need to go down that road, but by increasing the rents.
Yep.
is the basic concept there. But with a single family rental, the neighbors don't care what I'm charging for rent. It has nothing to do with the resale value of my property. So, but you can do some kind of forced appreciation with a single family rental by rehabbing the property, bringing it up to the conditions of, the rest of the neighborhood, or maybe even better. And so you've just added value to that property. Now you get a tenant in place. So buy, rehab, and then rent is the second R. Rent it out. And then you're going to try to refinance as soon as you can. So you may buy this. We were actually buying these with cash. Some people will use hard money lenders and, other ways of acquiring the properties. But then once you rent the property out, you can go and refinance it. Now, this is where some people get hung up, because if you didn't actually create added value, and some lenders aren't going to lend to you, or with COVID, for example, a lot of lenders were tightening their lending restrictions, or they were restricting lending, and it was harder to get a loan. So you could be caught in the middle of a rehab rent, and then, oh wait, I have this hard money loan that I can't refinance out of. So that refinance is normally with a traditional bank, where you're getting long-term low rate financing, locked in. You're recapitalizing, so you're getting money back from that refinance, which allows you to go out and repeat, meaning take that cash that you just got from that refinance and go buy another property. And that's the repeat, the final R in the Burr method.
And that's the key there, right? Is that you're getting to use that same dollar over and over and over again. I tell the story of probably one of my best deals was, I bought a property in between downtown Nashville and an up and coming county that was the next county over, in Mount Juliet, Lebanon area. And everybody had skipped over this little pocket in between. And I knew eventually that people were going to be moving there because they wanted to be closer to downtown. So I bought the property for $80,000. I paid 10% for 12 months on a loan to have access to that money. And that may seem like a lot to people that are not in the real estate investing game, but we took that $80,000. I put $20,000 into the property, and then the property appreciated, or was valued at 170. So basically I'm in it for 100, it's 170. I take 110 out. So I got paid $10,000 to do that.
Right.
Paid off my hard money lender. I make $450 a month in cash flow off that property. And then I use that $110,000 to buy a duplex, and then do it again and do it again.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's
super powerful strategy. Yeah. If you do it effectively.
And that cash, that lump sum you got, doesn't trigger any tax implications either, right?
Exactly.
Until you go to sell the property.
Exactly.
But yeah, the refinance has nothing to do with taxes, so which is another benefit. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, we've always left some money in each deal, which I'm okay with as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't turn down a deal like you had, but I'm okay with having some money in these properties.
It's skin in the game,
right?
Keeps you on your toes.
Absolutely.
So you've transitioned now from owning rental portfolio to investing in notes, and I'm all about this, and I want to learn more about this. So first of all, tell us what a note is.
Okay. So a note, most people are familiar with a mortgage on a house, right? Either a rental property, or ideal mostly with primary residences. So the note is, in its basic form, a note is a promise to pay. So the note itself, the document, the note is typically 2 or 3 pages, and it literally just says, I owe you this money that I'm going to pay according to these terms. It's a promise to pay. So mortgage notes, is one part of the note space. Some people invest in unsecured debt, and I deal with first lien mortgage notes. That's it. So a mortgage note, the mortgage itself or the deed of trust, depending on the state, will link that note or that promise to pay to a property that's the collateral. So that's kind of the most basic form of what a note and then the mortgage is.
Yep. So I heard this statement one time and I want to repeat it. I'll probably butcher it, but everybody's in the note space. You're either just paying the note or you're receiving the payment. And I equate it to a credit card. When I go to Amazon.com and I order my skinny jeans and ice cream scoopers or whatever I order from there, I owe the credit card money for that purchase. That is a note. I agree to pay within 30 days or I pay this interest. You mentioned a couple topics there, and I kind of want to go through a few of them. Secured versus unsecured. Can you help our listeners understand what's the difference between the two?
It's simply whether there is collateral or not. So a credit card is unsecured debt. So you got your ice cream and your skinny jeans and you promise to pay this credit card company back. But they really don't have any collateral that they can immediately come and take if you fail to pay them back. And that's typically why credit card rates are so high, because there's more risk there for the credit card company. When there's collateral, such as a house that's attached to this note, it backs up the promise to pay. If I don't pay my mortgage on my primary residence, my lender has the right to come and foreclose and take at least what they're owed, because that note is attached to my home, and that is a version of secured debt. So there's many different niches within this note investing niche, but we only deal with secured debt.
Okay, that's probably the best explanation I've heard. So thank you for that. Okay. What about, I hear a lot about first lien, second lien, first position, junior position, all that. What does that mean?
So a lot of people may be familiar with like a HELOC, for example, a home equity line of credit. That is normally a second position loan. So first and second position, if you have one mortgage on your home that you're living in and you're paying the bank that mortgage payment every month, that's a first position or a first lien mortgage. So then if you go and your property has appreciated and you say, you know what, we want to put on an addition, but we don't have the money for it, but we have all this equity in our home. Let's go take out a second mortgage. And that can be a version, that can be a HELOC. There are different versions of the second mortgage. Lately, HELOCs have been more popular. And so that becomes a second mortgage. So normally speaking, it has to do, it goes by the order that those documents were actually recorded. But for the simplicity's sake, your first mortgage is going to be the larger dollar amount, your primary mortgage on your home. And then any subsequent mortgage that you go out and get is going to be the second mortgage. So some note investors, some invest in first and second mortgage notes. Some only buy second mortgage notes. As you can imagine, second lien seconds, people just call them first and seconds. Seconds are normally lower dollar amounts. So the principal balance that's actually owed by the borrower is significantly lower than the first mortgage in most cases.
Is it fair to say a first position, the difference between a first and a second is who gets paid back first in case of default?
Yes.
Okay.
Assuming all your ducks are in a row, and there are always exceptions in this space. Yeah. That's one of the challenges of it. Understanding all the moving parts. But yes, I mean, that's the first position would get paid back first. If, let's say, the homeowner just stops paying, they lost their job, death in the family, whatever, they run into hardship, they stop paying both their first and their second mortgage. Either lender can actually initiate foreclosure, but let's say the first forecloses, the first lender that's in first position forecloses, and they are due their money back. So let's say the property is worth 200,000, and let's say the first mortgage is 150,000, but there's a second mortgage that's 70,000. Well, that second lender is likely not going to get all their money back. So
Yep.
that's also why, again, back to the credit card, it is secured, but it's closer to unsecured than the first position. So
Yep.
the interest rate on a second is normally higher than the interest rate on a first. And that's because they're in second position. They're not as secure. It's that simple.
Yep. Well, where there are challenges and problems, there's usually money to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into some of the returns that we can expect in notes, what is the difference between performing and non-performing? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of gray in the real world, right? There's sub-performing that's kind of in between. But a performing note is a note that the borrower is paying on. And, for most people, they don't even understand that in the real world, people may not be paying their mortgage, So for most people, it's a mortgage note that, that they're familiar with, where the borrower owns a home and they're paying their lender each month. Normally speaking, and it's kind of a moving target as far as defining what is a performing note, but most note investors will say at least 10, maybe 12 close to on-time payments in the previous 12 months. So they're caught up. The borrower is caught up. They're not behind on their mortgage, and they've been paying almost consistently, if not fully, on time for the last 12 months. Some people will call it performing. That you really do get into a lot of gray there, but that's my definition of a performing note. I'd say 10 to 12 payments essentially on time in the last 12 months, and the borrower is actually current. They're not behind. A non-performing note, they are behind. They are not making, they may be making mortgage payments, but they may be 4 or 5 years behind. So we have on my website, we have a blog post about our Jacksonville deal, Jacksonville, Florida, and a couple blog posts and a podcast. But when we bought that one, and we have some other examples as well, where the borrower is making payments and they're several years behind. So they've fallen behind on their mortgage. That's considered a non-performing note. So non-performing note, there may be no payments at all in the last 5-10 years. I don't deal with things like that. But a non-performing note is not a performing note. So anything that's not performing.
Yeah. So before we get into your Jacksonville deal, which is super inspiring, why are you investing in notes? Why did you? I mean, it sounds so difficult. It sounds complicated. Non-performing, secured, unsecured, all this. Why did you get into the note space?
So I think I really like the fact that you can be a note investor from anywhere. You can do it if you have an internet connection and a cell phone. You can be a note investor. Pretty quickly, I'd recommend you add some systems and, not just go off of, your iPad and travel the world. But you can do it from anywhere, and you can scale fairly easily. So you can get into the note space. A lot of the first lien notes that we buy are between $20,000 and $60,000 principal balance. So that's not, $1 million property that I got to go out and buy. It's easier. The barrier to entry is pretty low. I like that there's so many niches within this space, and that you can kind of find your own niche where you can become an expert in that particular area. And as far as performing notes, they can be pretty passive. We own our rental portfolio. That's been good, and it is actually growing, which is a good thing. But notes have several advantages over hard real estate, and I have another blog post comparing those two as well. But the kind of, I don't want to say it's passive. People like to throw that term around, especially if you're buying non-performing notes. It's anything but passive. But I'm not out swinging a hammer. I mean, I'm at my desk making phone calls, emails. Everything can be done from the computer, and you can scale pretty easily. So
Yeah, I think the best analogy I can give is you are the bank at that point. You are lending
Absolutely.
someone money to buy a house. And if
Yep.
they have problems with the house, whether it be toilets, termites, anything like that, then that is their issue. I've never had the bank come to me and say, hey, I need to come fix your toilet, or I want to do a home inspection after you bought it. I mean, once the money is lent, then you are just the bank and you receive payments. And if they stop paying, then you can go through legal proceedings to get the house back. So there's a
Yes.
lot of great returns that can happen both on the performing side and non-performing. I think your Jacksonville deal, though, kind of gives the best of both worlds. Can you talk to us a little bit about that deal specifically?
Sure. For more detail, go check out my my website. But it was a good one. We bought this note in I think it was maybe April 2019. That was on a property in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was non-performing. So they were about a little over 2 years behind on their mortgage payments, and turns out that the homeowner, the actual borrower, who, like you said, we became the bank. So now this homeowner owes us this money. So we bought the note for 46,000. She actually owed, principal balance was over 93,000, and total with all the arrears and interest and everything she legally still owed was 125,000, something like that. I'd have to go back and double check.
So I'm gonna stop you real quick. You
Yeah.
bought that for 46,000
Yes.
to a piece of property that owed you now 126,000 essentially.
Yes.
I mean, that's huge right there. You're buying out on 50 cents on the dollar. That's huge.
And it actually, the note space is fairly small, and I found out after the fact that I could have paid 40,000 for it, but
Semantics.
Yeah, right. It's a rounding error. Who needs $6,000? But now, yes. I mean, now I will say, before people get too excited, a lot of investors do not really look too closely at anything above the principal balance or above the property value. So although technically this borrower did owe us, we'll say 125,000, legally it's sometimes you really cannot bank on getting that money back. Really, I mean, you can't bank on any of it, but you definitely should not bank on anything over the principal balance. That's a whole different animal. But yeah, and on paper, this property, now another risk with note investing, like you said, you're the lender, you're not inside the property. One risk with note investing is when you buy a note, you normally don't get access to that property. You can if it's through the seller, but you're not calling up the borrower who lives in the home and saying, hey, let me get into your house because I'm trying to buy your mortgage note. It just doesn't work like that. So you really are taking a little bit of a risk, in you don't know what the inside of that property looks like. So we bought this, ended up trying to work something out with the borrower. She really was communicative, but kind of playing us and putting us off and saying, oh, I got to go on vacation for a couple of weeks. I can't, I'll talk to you after that. And it's like, okay.
She owes you 20, she's got 2 years of back payments, but wants to
Yeah.
go on vacation. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So, well, fast forward, we initiate foreclosure. I'm working with my Florida attorney down there, Erin Quinn. She's great. We start the foreclosure process because we just weren't getting anywhere. We'd be more than happy to work something out with her, but you can't control borrowers. It's kind of like parenting. You can do your best, but to encourage good behavior, but it's impossible to control the borrower. So another reason I like note investing is you normally have multiple exit strategies. You're not backed into a corner as a lender, at least not at that point. And so we were very close to foreclosing on this property. And then once she realized this was actually going to happen, she actually signed over the property to us via deed in lieu. So it's discussion for another day, but that's where she deeds the borrower deeds the property over to us, the lender, in lieu of us foreclosing. So
why would someone want to do that?
So why she would do that is foreclosure is not good for her credit history. We also ended up forgiving about $25,000. All said and done, she walked away with that being forgiven, that amount of debt being forgiven. And that's really, those are the two primary reasons. On top of that, she actually was not living in the property and she was renting it out. So side note, she was making income from this property and then not paying her mortgage. But
The returns are great on that.
oh, absolutely. I'd love to find that kind of deal. But she walked away because she ended up getting tens of thousands of dollars in debt forgiven, and because she doesn't have to deal with a foreclosure on her record, and it's just cleaner for both parties.
So I kind of want to explore that for a second, because I've done something similar called cash for keys on some of my rentals before, where as opposed to going through the eviction process with a tenant, I have given them money to move out of the property instead.
Yeah.
Some people are confused why we would do that. Can you maybe shed some light on why you would forgive $25,000 worth of back pay on that?
I mean, for one, it's time value of money. I have money wrapped up in this deal and I need to make it profitable. You're right. I need to get that money working for me somehow. So if I just keep delaying and hanging out and trying to reach for, every nickel, it's not going to be profitable. But in my mind, a deed in lieu and cash for keys, I know you're talking about a rental where you're not giving the deed over, you're not deeding the property over, but we do the same thing, cash for keys. And so it really is the same thing. I mean, our deed in lieu was cash for keys, and it was cash for deed, if you will. So, we forgave that amount because it was the right business decision to make. Yeah.
So I want to back up now because for our listeners listening to the story, so you bought this for 46.
Yes.
You essentially forgave $25,000 worth of debt. So now essentially you're in it for roughly around 70 to 75 on a property that is worth, what was the ARV at this point?
Well, so I would say we were in it for probably a little in the low 50s with the 46 we paid for it, attorney's fees, and that kind of thing. At that point, we were in it for, we'll say 52,000, and the property was, it's always less valuable than you think, but the property was worth over 100,000 at that point.
Yeah, I mean that's a killer deal that I would buy all day long.
Yeah.
Not even depending on what's wrong with the property, because I know I can go fix a property for less than 40,000 and still have some equity tapped into it. So
which is what we did.
I just want to double down on that point for a second for our listeners on, well, why would Jamie allow this woman to not pay her back payments? It's because Jamie's in it for $52,000 and has $50,000 worth of equity sitting there. It's better just to get rid of the problem and own the property from there forward. So another real key reason why I love the note space is because big banks cannot be flexible with borrowers. Right. They just have to turn a profit. And if you're an individual investor, you can go in and be very, very flexible on your deals and make sure that you're getting the returns you want.
Yes. I mean, and, to be clear, you can lose money that way. So if you're not careful there, and frankly, it's gotten a little bit harder to find deals, just like it has in the real estate investing space, the rental space. But yes, I mean, they can be very profitable. And this example, this case study kind of does walk you. There are a lot of different moving parts, a lot of different strategies that we were able to employ. So we did rehab the property from a distance, which is, I'm proud of that. I've never been to Jacksonville. And so now it's rented out, and we're about to collect our third full rent payment. It's so at this point it's somewhat smooth sailing. We've got a quality property management company down there that's on the ball, and it's been a good deal for sure. So we did some things wrong that we've adjusted, but that was a good deal.
Yeah. You mentioned you can lose money on allowing cash for keys or deed in lieu and things like that. I like to say you never lose money in real estate. You just haven't held it long enough, because I believe all real estate, if you hold it long enough, is profitable. You just got to keep holding it.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears. I mean, that's a ton of information and a lot of different rabbit trails that I'd love to explore with you at a different time. But this concept of infinite banking. So we got connected with Russ and Joey over at the guys with the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. And for those of you listening, fantastic resource. They do a tremendous job exploring all different levels of financing and ways to make money beyond Wall Street, meaning beyond stocks and bonds, like through real estate and things like that. But we've had several conversations about IBC. Can you give our listeners just a high level? What is, if I was introducing IBC to somebody, what is it? How would I explain it?
So IBC, infinite banking concept, was created by Nelson Nash, and it is it's kind of a philosophy. It's a really big picture way of taking control of your own banking system as a person, as a family, and it's bigger than just, we certainly can't go, explain the whole thing here in 5 minutes, but it is a really powerful way of taking control of your own banking, your own cash flows, taking that back from the big banks and Wall Street, frankly. So they're all kind of tied together. So
yeah.
And the tool that's used most often with infinite banking is a dividend paying whole life insurance policy. So that is, people kind of equate the two, infinite banking and whole life policies. It's not the same thing. One is IBC is bigger than that, and you can go, just like note investing, you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes with this. I am not nearly as, into IBC is really powerful. Don't get me wrong, but like Russ and Joey, I mean, some of these people use infinite banking to buy their groceries and that kind of thing. We're not nearly that far down the rabbit hole, but the basic concept of IBC is you're taking a whole life, high cash value life insurance policy. So for example, I have one on myself, I have one on my wife, I have two of my kids. And you're taking that life insurance policy that has a high cash value, slightly lower death benefit, and you're using that policy as collateral, just like we talked about secured debt versus unsecured debt. This is secured debt, right? Because the cash value in the policy is what's the collateral for the loan. So I can go take out this policy and then take a loan from the insurance company immediately. I mean, I'll have my money within 2 to 3 days, take that loan and go do whatever I want with it. So that was kind of a roundabout way of getting there, but that's the basic concept of you're taking a high cash value life insurance policy and borrowing against it and taking those funds and really doing what you want with them. That's up to you. Now you do need to be disciplined or you can get yourself into some trouble, but that's that basic concept of IBC and how it's used.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to go read Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I like to say that I'm here to help people explore different paths in real estate. That doesn't mean it's the only path, the best path, or the path. It means it's a path. Yep. And by doing that, I hope that people will get their mind expanded and can start thinking about things more creatively. And I'll be honest, even as I love numbers, I like finance, I'm just kind of one of those geeks. I had to read Nelson's book about 3 times to truly grasp the power of it. Yeah. But once I did, earlier this year, I saw my net worth start exploding because I was leveraging money in a different way. And the key to IBC that I think most people miss out on is it's not the best interest rate out there compared to what we're seeing in historically low mortgage rates, but it's the flexibility of it. Yes. So last night at 4:30 p.m., texted my financial guy and said, I want to take out a loan for $9,500. I think you know where this is going. And this morning it showed up. So I'm going to borrow money for 5% and put it in an investment for 10% without having to send a bank any kind of documentation, asset sheets, 3 months of banking, 2 years of tax returns and all that kind of stuff. And it just starts giving me a little bit more flexibility in doing real estate deals. So I just wanted to introduce that concept because I know that's something we have in common.
Yeah, if I could
For
just
everybody listening, there's a lot better resources than Jamie and I to delve into that topic, but it's extremely impactful once people really grasp their mind around it.
for sure. And I just wanted to piggyback on that real quickly. I looked it up a few years ago, IBC, and I read about it. And unfortunately, just like a lot of things, especially nowadays online, it's really controversial. And it's like, you have these, you either love it or you hate it. And I don't understand that, to be honest with you. Like, I don't understand why someone can't use IBC as a tool and maybe not, you know, worship Nelson Nash, but it's like you said, it's a tool that's out there for you, but it also doesn't need to be, I don't know, looked at as the devil. So I just I don't know why people can't be open-minded and learn about it and use it if it works for them. So like you, it did take me a little while to wrap my head around it. And then it was it was last year where it clicked. It was a couple months where I was working with Joey, and it really clicked. I'm like, okay, this is another way to fund a business or an investment or something else over here on the one side, while the policy, and this is a key point, and this has to do with how the policy is structured. So that's really important. Not all whole life policies will work for this, but the policy itself continues to grow in its value. That's different than almost any other tool out there that you can borrow against. So 401k, those loans don't work like that. So that was a big light bulb moment for me. I'm like, wait a minute, this just keeps growing no matter what I do over here on the other side. So, and then you can put the money back, and it's not the worst thing in the world to have, even by itself, if you're not borrowing against it, especially in these turbulent times.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying there, I would summarize that as uninterrupted consistency is the key to success in life. I mean, hell, even Rudy, who was 5'3", 125 pounds, through sheer grit and effort and showing up every day, got to play football at the University of Notre Dame because of his effort and consistency every day. And what you find is the second point, compounding. You don't want to disrupt compounding, and that's the beauty behind it all. So again, a topic that I'd love to kind of bring you back and explore further, and just listen to two people who know enough to sound really smart to their grandma and really stupid to people that know a lot about it. But it's super interesting topic. Switching into the last section of our show here, I've got the same 5 questions that I ask everyone. I'll start off with, what is your favorite book?
So I'm going to say The One Thing, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. I do need to reread it, but it was really impactful for me. Talks about focus and the domino effect. I think in today's world, especially with people working from home and so many different things coming at you, it's real easy to fall in the trap of, the shiny object syndrome, where you're just chasing everything that comes across your plate. And this book really spells out how impactful focusing on one thing really can be for your success. So
100%. I don't want us to both have a man crush on Brandon Turner today, but he talks about that's the book he's read like 100 times. And it's funny. I read that book in late January this year, right before all of it went down with COVID and everything. Nice. And I wrote down, like, here are the 3 things I want to do every single day. And I know if I do those things every single day, then 5, 10, 15 years from now, I'll just have this unexpected growth curve. And that's essentially the genesis of the book. And I agree with you. I'd encourage everybody to go read that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that point, I like to believe that you are a steward of your habits, and the things that you do daily make you who you are and who you want to be. What's something that you do every day?
So I do work out basically every day, not 7 days a week, but I do try to be active and do some kind of fitness routine. I'm not throwing weights around as much as I used to, but I do work out essentially every day. And then I'm working on my note business every day as well. So those are the 2 things that I'd say I'm pretty consistent with.
Do you have a time every day you work out?
I don't. I'm not, well, especially this has been such an odd year, but it's normally in the afternoon. I know a lot of people, I'm not your 4 a.m. I mean, I'll get up early, but I don't pretend like I'm a 4 a.m. ice bath, meditation. Morning routines are very powerful. I'm not knocking it, but I end up working out in the afternoon typically. So
yeah. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So I would say there's so much good advice out there, but I would say be a part of something bigger than yourself and see where you can add value. So athletics were always a huge part of my upbringing and my younger life, I guess. So I was always a part of a team, and then and then I joined the military where I was part of something bigger as well. So see where you can add value and serve. It's not all about you.
Yeah, love it. And something that needs to be said over and over again, I feel like in 2020.
Yeah.
What's the thing that you're most proud of in your life?
So I would say my military service. I mean, I'm definitely proud of being I'm the oldest sibling of 7, so I'm proud of being trying to be the best role model I can be to my siblings and my immediate family as well, but also my military service. I know I gave you 2 answers, but military wasn't really, it's not like not too many people in my family have joined the military, and I wanted to do something that I thought was meaningful and had purpose. And so served in Iraq for a year, and I'm definitely proud of that service.
Yeah. Well, we all appreciate that. Last thing, if you could sit down and eat a bowl of ice cream with anyone, who would it be and why?
So I was joking because you did send me the questions earlier, let's be honest. And I was joking with my wife that I need to say her because she's the ice cream guru in the family. And I mean, I said vanilla, so no, but I'm going to say this might surprise people. I don't know, but I'm actually going to say my real answer is George W. Bush. I don't want to get political on the show. It's not about that, but he seems like he's a fun guy to hang out with. He always had a nickname for people, and I'm curious if I would get labeled something, but I know he was controversial, and the whole Iraq thing may have been a mistake. But I think with the information he had at the time, he made some critical decisions and stuck to his guns and was a true professional. And also, just as a person, he seems like a fun guy. So I'd like to have a bowl of ice cream with him.
Yeah, look, I mean, tough position to be in, right? I think
Sure.
anybody that's in those roles is going to get criticized for good, bad, different, whatever. And I would say, looking back on those years, you never really saw him angry either, right?
No.
There's a lot of anger in politics today, and you never really saw him angry, and you saw him happy. And the thing I think I respect most about W is the way he transitioned. Yes. And how his and Michelle's relationship seems very special. And look, you don't have to agree with him. You just takes a big person to look at your rival in the face and be like, we differ, but it's going to be okay because we're the same and we're both American.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. He was a leader. Again, I don't agree with everything he did. That's fine, but he was putting the country ahead of himself and ahead of his own ego. So I think he was a true professional, and yeah, I agree with everything you just said.
And I hope as we all go into 2021, we remember, like, the enemy is not your fellow American. The enemy is not us. We may differ on how we approach things. I might want to do single family and you might want to do notes. That doesn't make you. So I hope everybody listens to this and understands that we're not endorsing one party or another.
No,
just
I'm
understand
not doing
that people
that.
think different, and we're all Americans.
Exactly.
So Jamie, thank you for your time. Super impactful. I want to delve deeper into notes because you left open some rabbit trails that I decided not to go down, but I'd love to explore with you at some other point. But if people wanted to find more about you, where could they go find and learn more about you and what you're doing?
LabradorLending.com. So LABRADOR lending.com. And I have a education/blog. It started out more as a blog, but it's kind of transitioned into more of an education site. And so I do think they're all free. I'm not selling anything on there at all. They're specifically about notes. We do have some stuff about single family rentals and things of that nature, but it's mostly about note investing. I actually put one out today that was about IBC, how you can use IBC to fund your note investing career, but it could be your rentals. It doesn't matter. So a lot of good free information at our website there. You can also email me at batemanjames@labradorlending.com.
And we'll probably cut this into this next part. Do you want to plug the podcast?
Sure. So I'm also a co-host now on the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast, which normally comes out every Friday. We just had a special episode coming out today. Chris Seveny, who's been essentially a mentor and a fellow investor for me in the last couple of years. He has had this podcast for several years, and it's probably, I think it is the most popular note investing podcast. I'll have to admit that started before I joined, but so we have that podcast, which is, we really try to add value. It's the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast.
Awesome. So LabradorLending.com and the Good Deeds podcast. Jamie, thank you so much for your information, your words of wisdom, and look forward to having you back sometime.
Thanks, Matt. Had a lot of fun.
All right.